Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something absolutely fascinating, one of the most dramatic, honestly mind-bending evolutions in the history of the Mughal Empire. We're talking about a period that literally reshaped the political and cultural map of India, and right at the center of it all is a figure of immense complexity. It is incredibly rare to see a leader make a total 180-degree turn from absolute brutality to visionary tolerance. But that's exactly what happened here, and it completely changed how an empire is built. So, think about this for a second. How exactly does a young, totally ruthless conqueror, a guy who literally ordered massacres, suddenly pivot to become one of history's greatest champions of religious tolerance? What on earth causes a leader to just completely throw out their old playbook for governing a massive, diverse subcontinent? Well, stick with me because the strategy behind this shift is truly a game changer. Part 1: The Boy Emperor's Brutality. To really grasp the scale of this transformation, we have to start at the very beginning. Akbar was declared emperor at just 13 years old, right after his father Humayun died in a sudden accident. Just imagine being a teenager and setting out to bring the entire Indian subcontinent to its knees. In those early days, Akbar was not messing around. He followed the harsh playbook of his predecessors and showed zero mercy. A prime example is the devastating 5-month siege of the Chittor fort in Rajasthan. The Rajput soldiers there fought fiercely, inflicting heavy losses on the Mughals. When Akbar finally breached the fort, he was merciless. He ordered the massacre of roughly 30,000 civilians, and the surviving women and children were enslaved. At just 25 years old, he sent a victory message with this incredibly chilling line: "With the help of our bloodthirsty sword, we have erased the signs of infidelity from their minds and have destroyed temples in those places and also all over Hindustan." At this point in his life, he genuinely believed that a monarch should rule through sheer, uncompromising military force. Which brings us to part 2, a pivot to peace. Because as this empire rapidly expanded, a very stark reality set in. Akbar realized that you simply cannot sustain control over a massive, incredibly diverse place like India purely by the edge of a sword. It's logistically and frankly politically impossible. So he made a massive philosophical shift toward a doctrine known as Soli Kul. This basically translates to peace with all, or universal tolerance of all faiths. Now, don't get it twisted. This wasn't just him being nice. It was a highly calculated, brilliant administrative strategy to weave the diverse fabric of India into one stable, unified empire. So what did this actually look like in practice? Well, it was a complete departure from the military-first approach. Akbar started forming strategic marriage alliances with princesses from neighboring Rajput kingdoms. He actively welcomed regional leaders into his court, even putting Hindu officials in top administrative roles. And crucially, this is a huge deal, he abolished the jizya, which was a specific tax levied only on non-Muslims. By hosting interfaith dialogues and rolling out these incredibly inclusive reforms, Akbar actually won over the exact same people he used to conquer. The contrast with his younger self is just mind-blowing. Remember that whole bloodthirsty sword phase? Well, later in life, Akbar's court historian Abul Fazl recorded this profound realization from the emperor. Akbar openly admitted, "Formerly, I persecuted men into conformity with my faith and deemed it Islam." I mean, how often in history do you see a ruler openly acknowledge such a massive, fundamental shift in their own worldview? It's practically unheard of. Part 3: The House of Translation. This newfound openness didn't just stay in politics, it completely revolutionized the culture of the empire. Now, here's a crazy fact. Akbar was actually illiterate. He couldn't read or write. But despite that, he developed this insatiable fascination with classical Indian thought and philosophy. He was desperate to understand the people he was ruling. So he established this legendary House of Translation at his city of Fatehpur Sikri. He had massive Sanskrit texts like the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita, the Panchatantra, all painstakingly translated into Persian. It was a monumental effort. The Ramayana translation alone was packed with 176 beautiful, intricately detailed miniature paintings depicting these epic scenes. He was literally building a cultural bridge between the Islamic ruling class and the Hindu majority. And you can see this incredible synthesis physically built into the world around him. Take the Panch Mahal, for instance, this stunning 5-storied structure at Fatehpur Sikri near Agra. It perfectly blends different architectural styles, creating this incredible space meant for cultural exchange and administration. It's a literal standing monument to his inclusive policies. It really shows how deeply these values were baked into the empire's foundation. Part 4: The Mughal Golden Age.
Because Akbar did the heavy lifting to stabilize the realm, his successors were set up for something spectacular.
When you track the timeline across the next generations, you see the direct payoff of all that stability. They didn't have to spend every waking moment fighting for survival. Akbar's son, Jahangir, kept the immense love for art and architecture going strong. Then his grandson, Shah Jahan, who of course is world famous for building the Taj Mahal, took that immense wealth and stability to its absolute peak. This era gave us an unbelievable flowering of classical music, calligraphy, Humayun's tomb, the Red Forts. The cultural legacy is just undeniable. But, as you know, history rarely moves in a straight line. Part 5, Reversing the Legacy. Fast forward a bit to Akbar's great-grandson, Emperor Aurangzeb. Under Aurangzeb, the Mughal Empire actually reached its absolute largest territorial size. But culturally and politically, he took things in a drastically different direction. Aurangzeb was deeply, strictly religious, belonging to Islam's Sunni sect. Gone was the opulent, syncretic, anything-goes vibe of Akbar's court. Aurangzeb lived a highly austere lifestyle, strictly observing religious rituals, and he was absolutely determined to govern by a very rigid interpretation of his faith. If you stack Akbar's legacy right up against Aurangzeb's rule, it is literally night and day. Akbar abolishes the jizya, Aurangzeb brings it back, along with new pilgrimage taxes on Hindus. Akbar embraces diverse faiths and patronizes the arts. Aurangzeb systematically dismantles that inclusive foundation, even banning things like music and dance in his court because he considered them un-Islamic. He effectively reversed the very policies his great-grandfather used to secure peace. So what are we supposed to take away from all this? We've just watched one massive empire being run using two completely opposite playbooks. One leader found stability through cultural synthesis and open-minded tolerance, while another sought ultimate control through strict religious observance and iron-fisted austerity. It really leaves us with a profound question. When you are governing a massive, diverse population, which strategy actually builds a lasting, resilient empire? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope diving into this Mughal evolution gives you a totally fresh perspective on how history is forged by the choices of its leaders. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.